welcome. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We'll start with the roll call.
Thank you. Mayor Levy.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Harvey. Here. Councilmember Carr.
Here.
Councilmember Matthews.
Here.
Councilmember Saunier.
Here.
Councilmember Sawyer.
Here.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. If you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, welcome everybody. For those of you that spent any time at all in Colorado Springs today, I guess I should say, welcome to the city above the clouds. 'Cause today was the greatest example. I just left there and it's miserable and I think 20 degrees colder somehow. Okay, we have no ceremonies. We have no additions, deletions, or corrections, so we'll move on to the consent calendar. Suzanne.
Thank you, Mayor Levy. This evening on the consent calendar, we have one item, and it is approval of the minutes from the from the January 19th council meeting.
It says on my agenda December 15th.
So does mine.
Yeah, and I'm looking at that, and I believe that's an error. I was trying to remember when the council meeting was. I think it was January 19th.
So we do have a correction to the
Yes.
agenda. January 19th.
And you will have the minutes.
Thank you. Council?
Move to approve.
Motion. Second.
Thank you. Suzanne?
Thank you. Carr,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Matthews.
Yes.
Saunier,
Yes.
Sawyer,
Yes.
Schaefer.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Suzanne. We have no unfinished business tonight. Move right along to agenda item number 7 and ordinances on initial posting, and welcome Sally Riley.
Thank you, Mayor Levy, council members. This is ordinance number 1296 on initial posting. It is to amend the municipal code, chapter 1831, concerning the Woodland Station Overlay District. This is the geographic boundary is being amended to remove the former AmeriGas property, which is just south of Pine Street and Midland Avenue, and set the public hearing for February 16th. This is a legislative item.
Okay, on initial posting, is there anything we need to ask before we move to consider this for the February 16th meeting?
I have a couple of questions, but not necessarily for tonight, Sally. If I could possibly answer them during public hearing. The impact on established DDA boundaries, if there is any.
There is not.
Okay, that question's answered. And then the impact of rescinding the entire overlay.
This is not proposed to rescind the entire overlay. It's only going back to its original boundaries.
Okay.
It's only taking this portion, this 0.9 acres, out of the overlay.
Would it be appropriate, though, to answer that question during the public hearing, whether or not we would want to ever rescind the entire overlay?
You could discuss that. However, you should stay focused on the request at hand during the public hearing, and then maybe we have another conversation about that later.
Thanks.
Thanks. Excuse me, anybody else? Okay, need a motion to consider ordinance 1296 on initial posting.
Move approval of 1296 as presented. Second.
Thank you. Suzanne?
Harvey,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes?
Matthews.
Yes.
Saunier,
Yes.
Sawyer,
Yes.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Carr.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries
Thank you.
unanimously.
Thank you, Sally. Suzanne, would you like to move us forward?
I sure would, Mayor Levy. This is on initial posting as well. This is ordinance number 1299. If council will recall, we spoke about this at the last council meeting, and this will be declaring the instrument for the public notification process and the method for the City of Woodland Park for the year 2017, and set the public hearing for February 16th, 2017. The ordinance was in your packet, and it details what we spoke about at the last council meeting.
Any questions, council?
May I ask, is this, this is an initial posting. When we
Yes.
go to public hearing, if you could give just an example?
I will give a staff report at that time and an
Okay.
example.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay, motion to consider 1299 on initial posting, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Levy,
Yes?
Matthews,
Yes.
Soinier,
Yes.
Sawyer,
Yes.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Carr,
Yes.
Harvey.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. We'll move right on to public hearings and approving ordinance number 1297. Dan, welcome.
Ordinance 1297 is public drainage easement across the Lot 3R, CD Weaver, number 1A of City of Woodland Park, Colorado. And if you would refer to one of the attachments that was just handed out entitled Ordinance 1297, the area of this drainage easement would be the area enclosed within the black lines that's shown on the attachment. It is recommended to move for approval after public hearing.
Thank you. Questions, council? Nobody signed up. Anybody like to offer public comment on ordinance 1297? This is going to be an easy night.
Any impacts either, any way, plus or minus? You might as well.
No, this was a direct result of Aspen Garden Way apartments being built, so this was just to encompass the drainage structure that was being basically occupied by Aspen Garden Way. So now this is just making it official as far as the city improvements that were required.
Anyone else? Call for motion.
Move approval of ordinance 1297 as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Suzanne?
Matthews,
Yes.
Soinier,
Yes.
Sawyer,
Yes.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Carr,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Levy.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, Dan, you're up.
Ordinance 1298 is a public drainage easement across Block 8, or Lot 8, Block 3, CD Weaver of Teller County, Colorado. And if you would refer to the other attachment entitled Ordinance 1298, the area that would be part of this easement is within the boundaries that are highlighted as shown on the attachment. It is recommended to approve after public hearing.
Council? Pretty quiet tonight. The community may weigh in on this if they would like to. Looks like a no. Okay, I'll call for a motion to approve ordinance 1298.
So moved.
Second.
Suzanne?
Soinier,
Yes.
Sawyer,
Yes.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Carr,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Matthews.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Suzanne. Okay, moving to new business, and Councilman Carr, I think, is going to present the community investment.
So this is my first time as a participating member. I've applied to this several times as a applicant, with applicant organizations, I should say. And so I got to see the other side of the process. I was pretty familiar with it anyway, but Since these are public meetings, by the way, people, you are all welcome to come to all our public meetings. Suzanne posts them quite prominently on the front door of City Hall weekly, I think. Anyway, we had no public there, so we proceeded. Good crew, very thoughtful, very professional. We had limited funds, as everybody knows, and we did the best we could. We tried to give away, some of us tried to give away more money than we had, and fortunately we have a committee there to rein in Councilman Carr. But anyway, there is an opening because one member has resigned, so that's still an opening. That's I'm not sure if it's posted on the website or not, but it is an active opening, I believe. And so I welcome Darwin Nacarado to give us the rest of the details, please.
Good evening. I'm Darwin Nacarado, 410 Craig Court here in Woodland Park. Chair of the Community Investment Committee, at the pleasure of the committee and the council, of course. This year's effort was a bit more effort than usual, shall we say. When we have fewer dollars, it gets harder. It's easy to give away lots of money, and we all know that. We have more applicants and more worthy causes than we can get to, and it's as simple as that. So with limited funds, and I don't know very many organizations or people that don't have limited funds, that's what we had to work with. We worked with $20,000 for this year. It was interesting, I guess I'd point out, the process was smooth as it has been for the last several years. That doesn't mean we don't argue. And in some cases even, we had some amusing things happen where people who represented a particular organization recommended the lowest number for that organization. And that happened with Pastor Bruce, and I guess I should introduce the members of the committee in addition to Councilman Carr. Suzanne is the staff liaison and a full member, Pastor Bruce Caldwell. And Sue Griswold, she's usually my wave of one, but we have more here tonight. We have two, so in addition to those on the dais. So that was interesting, and it brought forth at least some levity to the proceedings. You know, when we would say that I'm associated with that group, and I recommend, and it would be about a fourth of what everybody else recommended. I think we really didn't want to be embarrassed by recommending more than we thought we should for our own groups. You have the final recommendations of the committee before you, I believe, in your packets. It's a page that looks like that. And I'm ready, willing, and able to answer any questions you might have.
I'm going to start, if I
Please,
could. To me, there's one thing on this list that is concerning to me. First, you know, if a group is worthy, that's hard to measure. There's no question. And I'll start by saying this: all of you, I really do. I appreciate your time. What you do is great, and we have, you know, close to 30% less money this year than we've had in the past. Maybe more, maybe 40. Anyway, we go from about 28 to about 20,000 ballpark. And I get that it's hard. I don't know what the amount requested has to do with the final amount that's actually funded. Here's what I do know. The Cruise Above the Clouds got about $2,000 last year, returned more than, to many of the people on your list, $30,000. I could argue that there's not another group here that has that kind of affect community investment in our community. Also, in terms of amount requested, they requested 5,000 and received 1,000. That was the biggest disparity in anybody, top to bottom. That's intriguing to me, considering what they bring to our community. I'm sure you've had some discussion about that in particular, but it just stands out for me, Darwin.
Most certainly. I tend to agree with you. One of the things that we looked at with the crews was certainly the return on investment and who they return the money to. And there's certainly a return on investment to the city beyond what they contribute to various groups from the proceeds of the show. Many of the recipients on that list are people who are also on this list of recipients from the city. And so we also, we took a look at that. We also looked at the in-kind services provided by the city for the event, such as the park itself, free of charge. I do believe that they pay for, and I could be corrected here on this, but I believe they pay for the police services directly. I'm not sure of that. I believe so, though. I believe they pay the individuals directly, maybe some stipend.
Some of our city employees work, it's off their hours and
Yeah.
they work and they get paid directly.
Correct. But the city does still provide in-kind service to the organization for the event. I'd like to see a lot more. I mean, I'd like to see, I'd like to be able to give them an awful lot more. And by the way, they requested about the 5,000. I think it's every year. It's about the same number. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it answers my question. Council, one way around this, of course, if you happen to agree, and you think that maybe more money is due to them, and I might be out here on an island where they're concerned, certainly we could find maybe $1,000, maybe reduce our reserve by 1,000. I know you hate to do that. Maybe find it somewhere else from others. To me, this is just a big oversight. That's just how I view it. Just because I see what they give back, half the people on the list they give money back to. We don't have anything else in our community that I can think of in terms of community investment that matches what they do. Half the people on this list are getting more than they're getting. I just don't understand it.
If I may, sir, also, I would also indicate that we consider the Cruise Above the Clouds and the Symphony Above the Clouds as signature city events. And so we'd very much like to be able to do more for both of those organizations.
There's no answer. Like I said, I might be here on my own in this regard. It's just how I feel about the event.
Sue was just reminding me that we also discussed the idea of perhaps using some of the funds that they get each year as seed money for the following year instead of donating it all, so that they don't have to come back to the city for that seed money every year. That's a valid argument, I think. I'd still like to see them supported as best we can.
I would like to say, if I may, that is an excellent suggestion. Some of these events do pay for themselves and bring in money to be distributed to other entities that could use the money. Cruising Above the Cloud has been doing that thing for many years inside of Woodland Park and have made tremendous contributions. I'm not opposed to what you say, Neil. I certainly am not.
Can you find it somewhere else on this sheet is my first question, because I'm not thrilled to go into the reserve, honestly. Can we find it within our budget? And where would that be? Or do you guys agree with me or not?
think you can fund it within your reserves. I'm not opposed to dropping the reserves down $1,000 or $2,000 for an event that gives you more bang for your buck than having the $2,000 in reserves.
I agree.
I wholeheartedly support them and many other organizations on this list. I don't know why the monies are consumed the way they are from the organization. They should be self-sustaining every year, have their $5,000 to do their events. That's just my opinion, and this is my first rodeo.
Mayor? So looking at this, when I think of community investment, I think of helping less fortunate. That's when I think of community investment, that's what I think. So some of these on here I feel they're more helping the city of Woodland Park, they're not helping the less fortunate. What are the requirements to even be on this list? Is there a requirement to even be on this list?
Nonprofit.
Nonprofit.
There are several. You have to be nonprofit and have a 501c3. And I guess I would tell you that this year we cracked down a little bit more on groups that didn't provide all the documentation that they should of their 501c3 status and so on and so forth. And I believe that our communication to the applicants this year will include something to the effect that if you don't give us a complete packet next year, we won't look at it at all.
And it's
So,
this.
but I happened to, Suzanne happened to find the original presentation to council that created Community Investment Funding Committee.
How many years ago?
This was presented in February '08.
Just a little history before that,
Yeah.
if I could. The community investment process has been in place for a long time, a couple of decades. I've been here 19 years, and it's been here that whole time. Sally might have a better recollection. And when in its early stages, the applications were intended to come from those who it would truly be a community investment, an investment that would pay dividends. Dividends in the sense of contributions to organizations such as Help the Needy, the Clothes Closet, the Community Cupboard, and to the arts. And it always was about a 50-50 split between those entities because it was an investment in that whole spectrum of a community. In the early days, we had 6 or 7 applications, and the council would review them all in a public meeting. And then it got to be 9 applications and 12 applications, and pretty soon we were having 3-hour council meetings to go over 20 applications, and the council in about 2007 said, that's enough. We're going to form a committee. Darwin was one of the original members, and we came up with criteria, and that's the document that he's referring to now. And it gives equal weight to those people who receive money and then turn around and do something with it to help the community, or those people that do arts. And so even as you look at this list, you'll see that we still have that good distribution of what I'll call investment, philanthropic, and the arts. So it still is a pretty good balance in that regard. So that's just a little bit of history that I think is important in understanding the whole process.
So the way I see this is this list is going to grow every year unless we have a cap. Do we have a cap?
We don't have a cap. We have a cap on the amount that can be put into the fund.
Correct.
We've not reached that. We actually, the document says that when the reserve reaches a certain point, there will be no community investment. So per the guidelines, not a law, there should be 0. But the council said, no, it's too important to the community. So that's how we arrived at the 20,000. But we've seen similar number of applications, I would say in the last 5 or 6 years, consistent with what you're seeing tonight.
It's going to become diluted. Like this CASA. To me, parents work. They need their children watched. We're not giving them anything.
CASA is
different.
Well,
Court
so
appointed.
supervised exchange parenting time. That's
Yeah.
the program needed.
CASA is court-appointed special advocates, and it is, somebody help me.
So this supervised exchange parenting time is for, say, birth parents that don't get along.
Gotcha.
And
Of course.
when they have to have a neutral meeting place to do a custody exchange of children.
Okay.
CASA is, my recollection over the years, has a very large 7-digit operating budget.
Indeed, that's one of our criteria that we strengthened this year because we knew we had to tighten down on the amount of money that we could grant. And CASA had 1.377 million in salaries.
I can see why there's a zero there.
Yeah, so we want to, it's not that we don't think they're worthy. And I don't want anybody to go away from here thinking that that's what the committee thought. It isn't. We believe that all of these applicants were worthy. We just want to be able to make an impact on them. And with a few $100 to give to someone who pays nearly $4 million in salaries, it's just not going to have an impact.
We also, if I may interject, we also looked at net assets, net worth, and things, and to give $200 to somebody who's got $4 million in the bank seemed kind of ludicrous. So there's some of that going on too, and some of these are balanced that way. We had some people who were hand to mouth, net zero capital assets or any kind of assets really, and so those people just to keep alive, they need $500. Here's $500 kind of thing. We had 20,000, and that's just the way it is, and we had to do the best. So there's a lot of criteria we had to utilize, including is this really going to matter to them? All these organizations matter to us emotionally, but we tried to make the most impact we could per dollar on the organization. So that's another little thing that we threw in here besides massive salaries.
And in other
I'd
words,
like to say one other thing too, in regard to what David said. My first stint on council was when we were still doing this at this council meeting, and the meetings were rough and long, and my very first meeting was one of those. And I just want to say in regard to that, thanks to you guys and this committee since then, it really does a yeoman's job. It is tough because every one of these are deserving.
absolutely.
But you have to make a cut somewhere and make some judgment calls, and that's what this committee does, and we greatly appreciate it because it can go a lot of to and fro between everybody who has different interests in different committees, obviously. But I really appreciate the work that you've done as you have every year.
Thank you. I would say one of the other criteria, one of the people in the group really thought that the number of people served was a major criteria, so we included that. What we really did was we had everyone go do their homework and go through the stack of 2,200 pages of applications. It was amazing. And then come back and make recommendations, and we run around the horn in the committee meeting on a random basis. In other words, a different person would start the recommendation for each group each time we went around. And one individual thought that number of people served was a major criteria, so we included that when we came to consensus. Salaries paid was a major criteria. Did they provide the 501c3 or a copy of their 990? Half didn't. What was their net worth or net assets, if we could determine that? Sometimes it wasn't easy to determine that. And so we put all of that criteria together, and we saw that, for example, CASA, using their own numbers, served 23 people last year. Now, I also saw them on Channel 5 News down in the Springs, and they had a major effort down there, and it was a tremendously successful thing, but that's not our community, and that's not Diller County. So, I mean, that's kind of the thought processes that, and the discussions that took place going through each one of these.
Yeah. I have complete confidence in these numbers and what you guys looked into. And so I step back and I think about the future and the numbers growing here, and I almost see where we can split this list up and create two separate funds, maybe one called community investment, and that would be the arts, and then maybe a community assistance fund, which would go to the nonprofits that help with food and clothing. Maybe that's a better way to look at this in the future budgets, and that way we're not arguing with Cruise Above the Clouds gets more money or less money than the Clothes Closet or the Coalition. I think we need to really, we're gonna grow as a community. This list is gonna grow. Maybe we need to chop it in half and have separate funds so we're not having this discussion with the mayor about Cruise Above the Clouds. Should they get money where the clothes closet, I definitely know they don't have much money coming in, and they help out a lot in this town, and they help the less fortunate more than Cruise Above the Clouds, who are bringing their $100,000, $200,000 cars and parking them on our, hopefully they won't this year, on our grass. So do you see where I'm getting at for the future? I think maybe we should really think about that, council, and maybe a 2018 budget, consider that.
If I may reply to that, sir. I think Councilman Matthews may recall from his first meeting, that is exactly how it was done back then, except that it was done in this open council forum. And we did break it into those two groups, had two separate sheets that we worked from, and so on and so forth. I'd like to see that happen again. Also, what has happened over the years is that some of the groups that, there used to be, for example, a line item in community investment for the Chamber of Commerce. And council wisely said, wait a minute, that's probably something that's big enough that we ought to be looking at that separately. And so you did. And I would recommend to you that at some point, I think we need to define what we think are signature community events, and perhaps have those be separate line items within the budget. There could be a lot of discussion about what would make up a community event, certainly. You know, I mentioned it in the meeting, and Sue rightfully said, well, what about Oktoberfest? I didn't have a good answer for that, because she's right. But there certainly are some events, perhaps Cruise Above the Clouds, Symphony Above the Clouds, that draw people to Woodland Park. And so it's not only the monies that Cruise Above the Clouds turns around and donates to other organizations, it's the people they draw to the city who spend their money here as well. And so actually at one time we got probably a little far afield, and we defined our criteria a little too narrowly as financial return on investment. And then one day we all woke up and said, wait a minute, there's more to this than a financial return on investment. We need to consider all these other quality of life issues and who we are as Woodland Park, what makes Woodland Park what it is. Those things need to be considered as well. So I rambled a little bit there, and I apologize for that, but that's sort of my background on it.
I served on the committee the last 4 years. The numbers are not necessarily growing. We've had as many as 30 applications, I recall, and the last 2 years have been down. The funds have been, I think at maximum, maybe 36,000. So this is a little more than half that. I think the process has been fine-tuned. I don't currently see a need to split the list into two, you know, unless we're dealing with more funds. Otherwise, you know, if we were to split it into two $10,000 funds to be paid, that doesn't sound like a good idea to me.
I agree. Val?
Just to help out here a little bit, since I was sitting in the room, we to answer Councilman Sawyer's concerns and idea, we kind of mentally did that. Exactly what she said. We kind of mentally did that because, as the chair recognized, we do two return on investments. One is quality of life, and the financial, and the aesthetics of the kind of organization that we're trying to support being something we'd be proud of to have in Woodland Park, which I don't know what that return on investment sounds like, but that rambling sentence was another consideration. So we kind of do that already. Not that we couldn't consider that when we start looking at the budget to, you know, do what you mentioned, but I just wanted to mention that mentally we were doing that in the we had two meetings, by the way, not just one. So we got the two shots at exercising our opinions and our averaging and all the things we went through. Thank you.
Well, I don't recall that you'd had an issue before with incomplete 501c3 documentation. Why was that an issue this year?
Yes, we actually have had that issue, and every year, up until this year, we have groused about it, so to speak. And what we did in previous years was simply to contact them and say, this is the amount that you've been recommended for, but you're not going to get it until you provide whatever. And this year we decided, well, we're going to try to take a little bit different approach, and we're just going to say, look, you didn't provide this year, and we overlooked it. We were willing to look past it this year, but that's not going to happen again. And in fact, at the beginning of the first meeting that Councilman Carr mentioned, we had a lengthy discussion as to whether we wanted to just flat put them over to the side and not even consider them. And then we looked at it, and it was over half the applicants. And we think these are good causes in every case. And so we thought maybe that's a bit too draconian too suddenly. So that's.
Was the absence of the documentation, did you feel like they did not have it somewhere, they just had not produced it?
In some cases, it's because the organizations are so small. They don't have anyone dedicated to doing this sort of thing. In some cases, we know they're 501c3s because we help work through the process with them. But the letter of our requirement says you should give us a copy of it every year.
Well, I would like to say, though, I agree with the mayor that I would like to see more money allotted for Cruise Above the Clouds, because I do understand what the return is for the community. But on the other hand, I really respect the work that you've done on this year's small amount of money. I also am appreciative of the council allowing us to have $20,000 to distribute. It could have been zero.
If it wouldn't make a big scene, I'd get down on my knees right here and think.
Might be entertaining, but no.
So at least 21 people.
So I appreciate what you did. I respect the amounts that you presented to us tonight, and I fully support them.
Thank you.
And I would like to add that in Cruising Above the Clouds and in other events, that these organizations are invited to sell their products to raise money for their organizations. Not only the monies that the Symphony Above the Clouds, Cruising Above the Clouds, and other organizations here raise money. It should be just common decency that these organizations are invited to solicit or provide a service or get exposure and be able to increase their activities or fundraising via through these events. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the food pantry made over $2,500 last year at Cruising Above the Clouds. So it's not just people parking their cars. It's a fun time, and it brings a lot of people into the area. It increases taxes taken in, and the city has an obligation to manage its monies to ensure the fact that, and council, that we have the monies to put towards these organizations so we can increase the dollar amounts if needed. That's exactly how I feel. This is a worthwhile thing to be involved with as a city. We shouldn't be on the string like we are right now. We should have the money to support these organizations. These organizations are cooperative. They cooperate with the city. They bring business to the city. They bring notoriety to some of these organizations. I've got more power to you. I deeply appreciate what all you guys do. Every one of you. I think it's great. I wish we had more money. I'm sorry we don't.
Ken?
If I may, sir.
This whole process is, it's, you know, like we talked it had before. I mean, you can argue the Symphony Guild brings a huge amount of people here as well. So does the Cruise. I don't disagree with that at all. But that's what this whole process is about, and it's tough. And I'm really glad we have a committee doing it now. And I guess at this point, I would like to propose that we at least vote on this as is and see where we are, and if we can move forward, or if we need to have more discussion on what we are going to adjust. So I'd like to propose approving this as presented.
Second.
Val?
I just wanted to add another comment, discussion. In relation to what Councilperson Harvey, sorry. Carol said, we have, it was suggested in the committee that possibly to help with the documentation in these situations where they're small, that we designate somebody in the committee as, in other words, when Suzanne puts out the notice, the letter says, and if you need help, here's who to call to make sure that you're doing things right. I volunteered for that, but it could be anybody. I thought it was a useful idea that we provide a resource, because some of these people, I mean, as Darwin says, there was half of these that would just been automatically disqualified. So, including, I think we had a problem with Cruz. Actually, I'm not sure. Yeah, we had a problem with Cruz. But if we didn't make it a huge check mark for that, but it really is, it's a problem when they don't provide the documentation. So I suggested, and I'll just throw this out for future reference, that was one thing we suggested, that we have some liaison that could help those kind of organizations.
You know, we have a motion and a second. It's going to help me feel better if I bring Phil Layton up here and have him say a few words, knowing which you know now. Good. Phil leads the effort for Cruise Above the Clouds, and you know, my question, you heard the discussion. People love what you do. We're a little short on money this year, and it looks like we're going to end up giving you $1,000. How's that going to change what you guys do?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, David knows how we are as far as being good stewards with our money. And $1,000 or $1,500 isn't going to make or break this car show. You know, I've been before you before and said, you know, we do this for community, and that's why I'm here today, because we're for community. We're happy with the $1,000 that you give us. We'll grow that. The event will continue, and I think that some of the things that you want to consider is when you do this stuff is in kind. I'm on the board of directors for the Pikes Peak Hill Climb, and I know when they figure out a lot of those sponsorships, it's based on in-kind donations. I think that while it's not on the table today, we're going to see a tenfold increase in what it's going to cost us to use the park. So things like that the city can say, okay, that's a city event, we're not going to charge you for that, or other thing. The police department volunteers some time with us, so that's money we don't have to spend out of pocket. So we're fine with $1,000. You know, hopefully next year maybe there'll be, and you got to realize you guys increased it $5,000 at the last meeting that I came to. Originally it was $1,500 or $15,000. So, but I just got to share with you, I'm looking at the organizations that you're supporting, and more than half of them, we exceeded the amount that you're giving away in community investments just this year alone. We gave $31,000 back to the community this year that over the 25-year history of the event has topped $295,000 that we've given back to the community as a result of the car show. So we will continue that. We thank you for your contributions. City staff has been great in putting on this event, and we're looking forward to a great year. So,
thanks very much, Phil. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Great job.
Yeah, very decent. Very decent.
Okay, we have any more public comment before we take a vote? Darwin, thanks for your time. Suzanne, we have a motion and a second.
We do. Sawyer?
Yes.
Schaefer?
Yes.
Carr?
Yes.
Harvey?
Yes.
Levy?
Yes.
Matthews?
Yes.
Sonier?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Suzanne. Darwin, great job. Thanks, and Val, really good. We all know how hard that is. John knows better than most of us because he sit there for 4 years. There's no right or wrong, but for me, I just thought that was a little bit of an oversight. In the meantime, we always have next year, and keep up the good work, Phil. Okay, we will move on. Public comment. items not on the agenda. I don't have anybody signed up tonight. Would anybody like to come to the podium? Mrs. Miller, you're quiet this evening. Nothing for the Chamber of Commerce. Okay, we'll move on to reports. I'm going to be quiet today too. I don't have much energy left. A little bit under the weather. Did have a chance to go with David to the Heritage Center at Cripple Creek today and sit down for an hour or so with Donald Lynn, who's the Lieutenant Governor for our state and under John Hickenlooper, obviously, and talked about the issues, if you will, in our community, and I think they're the same as they are everywhere. They talked about education, we talked about housing, we talked about broadband, we talked about all those things that come to mind when we think of maybe some of the deficits in our community, and of course the bottom line question for her the whole time was, how can you get us more money, right? And I'm sure she hears that everywhere she goes. She's visiting every county this year, but you know, it was great to have a chance to meet her and start that relationship. And if you think, you know, distributing 20,000 stuff, they're really in a tough spot at the state. And so just a great opportunity for David and I to meet her and start that relationship. Other than that, I don't have anything, and so I will turn it over to Carol.
Mr. Mayor, it's not entirely relevant to council business, but I just wanted to remind folks of the Super Bowl this weekend, and I only say that because, probably unbeknownst to many of you, a large contingent of DoD forces, civilian and military, support that Super Bowl effort. It is the lead federal agency for the security at that event in Houston is spread across state and federal agencies, but we have a pretty large footprint in Houston that will include everything from EOD teams to bomb sniffing dogs to medical support. So keep them all in mind when you're watching those wonderful commercials this weekend. I have participated in Super Bowl security before, but all I got to do was sit in a van in the parking lot. I never got to actually go into a stadium, but there will be a large group doing that this weekend as well.
Interesting. Val?
I've got a bunch of things. First of all, I want to put a statement out there. 2+ months ago, I composed and emailed the text of a letter to the editor of local newspapers, which they published. Just 2 days ago, I was informed that the published content included a sentence that did not sound like my thought I have. So I went ahead and researched it, and I had not read what had been published until 2 days ago, but checked and found out that I had accidentally emailed a first draft with draft constructs in error, target, and intent not found in the final version. This was lazy on my part to not thoroughly check my submission word for word, but that will not happen again, hopefully. The budget mayhem and my then recent surgery and pain medications probably contributed to my lack of full capacity to thoroughly ensure my final version text was what was being submitted. I want to emphasize that I do not consider the city management or staff lazy at all. My direct experience is that they all work hard to support the citizens and their mission. I apologize for my draft misstated sentence in that published letter. Of course, the final version of the letter I intended to send out had nothing close to that language, although the overall subject matter regarding salary philosophies remained. I apologize to David and his staff for any hard feelings my laziness to check that work has incurred. Another subject, please accept, if you can, that. Another subject, the current VRC members met briefly, and the clerk has received some applications to join the Vehicle Utilization Review Committee, which council will evaluate at our next meeting on February 16th. On another note, I recently attended the Panthers high school basketball game against Harrison with my wife. We thoroughly enjoyed being close to the sport I love to play and coach. Again, my coaching hat was on. I saw that they made a great effort, and I thought for certain they were going to win the difficult game against all odds, but some basics on meeting the pass ball were not crisp, and unfortunately just barely lost. But heroic effort by the whole team. I'm real proud of the team. They used their height advantage just exactly the way they should have. It was great. I've been there with losing close games like that, and they'll get through it because these are much larger schools. They should be very proud of themselves. I encourage all council and the entire population to come root on these young men and women we have in our community doing organized sports. The gym has lots of seats, and they have lots of energy and skills to show us we still have great hopes for our coming Woodland Park generations of student athletes. Third subject, I also want to mention that the Panthers baseball team is doing a fundraiser for a tournament, spring training tournament, I call it, to Arizona. I'm handing my contribution to the coach and hoping they can get 19 more checks like mine to gain their fundraising goal. Good luck.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool, Val. From start to finish, everything is much appreciated. Ken?
I would just like to say, at last meeting, I neglected to point out that Pat Hisloff, who graciously stepped aside from being considered for one committee, and she's on several in our community and does a lot of work, but she is now the chairman of the Keep Woodland Park Beautiful Committee, and we're very pleased to have her in that position and look forward to working with her. And just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. She's a very hard worker and volunteer for our community. That's all.
Mr. Saunier?
Yeah, talking about raising monies, I'd like to thank the Tweed Holiday Home Tours. They raised a bunch of money for different organizations in town. We are a given community, and I deeply appreciate businesses and citizens, as well as council, given to causes to help further education, food pantries, and other things that we do in town. Speaking of the Super Bowl, Karis had a great men's gathering this week, which I went to. James Brown was there talking about the Super Bowl. He gave a great motivational talk. Found it very interesting. I met people from all over the world and from all over the country. Again, they add value to our community, and what a great way to spend some time. Thank everybody for participating in these meetings. I deeply appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Sawyer, nothing.
I have nothing.
And I have nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Then we'll move on. Mr. Buttery?
Thanks, Mayor. Our city attorney is absent this evening. Councilman Carr, thank you very much for your statement. It's deeply appreciated. Dan, give us an update on the Aquatic Center, please, sir.
Well, this week the Masons took full advantage of the very nice weather we have been graced with in February, so they continued to go vertical. Structural steel was also delivered to the site, and they are swinging steel in the northwest corner, which would be the mechanical room area, ship and receive in, the cabana, some of the lap pool, so onward and upward. The team diligently, and when I say team, I mean the design team, the construction team, and also the city staff that's involved with it, continue to look for value engineering or cost savings, if you will, whatever you want to call it. We did find a small, portion last week, about $2,400 worth of something that wasn't required, so we used a little bit of that to put it towards something that will be beneficial, as far as something as simple as a light in the pump pit that was overlooked during design. So the due diligence of all parties involved as far as trying to recognize those cost savings continues as well.
Thanks, Dan. Council may recall, and I don't think I reported this to you, at an earlier meeting we had Hunter Drummond make a presentation with some of his concerns about some of the decisions with the Aquatic Center. I had the good fortune of hosting Hunter's little sister and mom and dad, along with Cindy Keating, to discuss the Aquatic Center and some of the processes that we went through for the decisions, and then we had a chance to go visit the site. Hunter used his camera to video and audio the entire tour, and I understand he put it on a blog. At the end of the discussion, they may not have agreed with some of the decisions, but at least they understood the process that we went through for those decisions. On a sadder note, we're going to say farewell to Dan. His last day with the city is tomorrow. He is going to be seeking another opportunity that's more in line with his past experiences. He's just been with us a short time, but he's added great value to our crews and to the entire city staff. So, Dan, we thank you very much for your short service to the city, and we wish you the best of luck in the future. Thank you. And that's all we have this evening, Mayor.
Can I ask a question? Hunter was concerned about diving board timing systems. Timing system is very expensive, and a diving board not so expensive. And I have also expressed my concerns about surveillance cameras, especially in a situation where there's people gathering and water and things can happen, slips, drowning, other things, accusations and all of that. Can you tell me if there's any forward movement in acquiring a timing system or a diving board and surveillance for inside the pool?
I can address two of the three at this time. The diving board, the entire system, I think, is about $16,000, and the mounting part of that will be built into the pool. So I think the diving board, believe it or not, they're extremely expensive. That one, depending on the savings that we have with the rest of the construction, would be relatively easy to fund. But please rest assured that the single diving board absolutely meets the specifications for the Colorado High School Sports Association to host high school level meets. Also remember that we're going to open the pool in the fall of 2017, and it will take a while for the school system to establish diving teams, and even a little bit longer before they host their first meet. We will have the ability to host meets from the very first day that the pool is open. The second diving board is really critical when the dive team, that portion of the swim team, is doing their training. It's less important for meets. We'll be able to have the facility ready for meets. Do I think that the second diving board will be there when we open? It very likely could. We're still going to be balancing many different systems within the pool. The timing system, the school has said that they would rent that for the meets, and the systems are certainly adequate for that. We're under discussions with some entities about providing sponsorship for that timing system. They range anywhere from $50,000 to $90,000. It depends on how much of a display you have. That's really the driving cost. The touch pads are the same no matter what the system is. It's really what the displays look like. So I'm less hopeful that we'll have that from the city's coffers to include that when the pool opens. But again, it will be some time before we are able to host a meet. And then the last, on the surveillance cameras, we are absolutely putting in the conduit. We're getting some prices for IT components, and we'll be looking at what the costs are for the surveillance cameras as well. I understand the concern about safety. The adequacy of lifeguards, it's mandated how many lifeguards are in an area. We will always meet that criteria, and so we will have coverage, visual coverage for the pool, so the public can absolutely feel safe. And when we can get the money for surveillance cameras, we will put those in as well.
I would imagine the insurance company does not have the same confidence.
We'll have that discussion with them so that we make sure that we're covered as much as we need to be.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? I didn't mention this, but I think I should for everyone that's here and everyone that's listening. The Small Business Revolution, most of you know a little bit about it, but the time's going to be upon us soon to vote. So the Deluxe Check Corporation, most of you know who they are. They created this Small Business Revolution in an effort to help small towns be better, if you will. And fortunately, Woodland Park was named to the list of of 8 finalists to start. February 9th, a week from today, they're going to reduce that number to, I'm told, somewhere possibly 4 or 5. If that's not right, somebody here tell me, Jane. And so when that happens, assuming we're one of the 5 finalists, which I'm sure we will be, now it's incumbent upon us to vote. And voting means going to your phone or to your laptop or to your computer, to your iPad, and you can use every one of those devices every day. So you can vote once a day on all your devices, vote for Woodland Park, and they're saying the number is probably close to 250,000 votes. I think we have about a week to vote. Is that right, Jane? Tell me what I'm missing. Should you come up and add to this? Because you know more than I do.
Thank you, Jane Mannon, Special Projects. I think you've got most of it. The announcement right now they're talking about will be made on Facebook Live on the Small Business Revolution Facebook page. So it's 7 a.m. Eastern, 5 a.m. here. And as soon as we get that announcement, we're going to start sending out reminders to everybody to vote. But yes, the voting closes February 16th, and the final announcement is made February 22nd on who wins the business support from Deluxe.
Great, thank you.
I'd like, if I'm, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it's important, I think, to have everybody in your family, your friends, your children, your relatives, no matter where they are in the country. They don't have to be in Woodland Park. They can be in North Carolina or anywhere and vote for Woodland Park. So in your network of friends, make sure they know about this and they vote.
Exactly.
That really will make a huge difference.
Everybody that you've ever known.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Eugene. Thanks very much.
May I add something?
Please.
Caris College is very on board with the program, and they are going to be a tremendous help to us getting votes.
Yes, they will. Okay, sounds good. Thanks, everybody, for coming. This meeting's adjourned.
We haven't got an hour.